Last night's Four Corners was as much a story of family tragedy as anything else. A son, brother and grandson lost to the equivalent of a cult. There were grieving parents, a grieving sister, and a family facing dark threats from among their own.
The loving and caring brother and nephew, they became strangers.
But in this particular story, there are much larger implications. Tim Stewart has been a long-term friend of the Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and it is not a religious cult Tim Stewart has been involved with, but a conspiratorial ideology the FBI has identified as a driver of domestic terrorism in the United States. QAnon is a far-right political religious conspiracy theory alleging that satanic, cannibalistic pedophiles run a global child sex trafficking ring and conspired against former President Donald Trump during his term in office. QAnon followers were centrally involved in the attack on the US Capitol on January 6. Tim Stewart's involvement in QAnon does not in any way tar the Prime Minister with an association with the group.
I find it deeply offensive that there would be any suggestion that I would have any involvement or support for such a dangerous organisation. I clearly do not.
But last night's Four Corners program documented a deeply troubling trail of text messages which raised the possibility Tim Stewart was able to get the Prime Minister, probably unknowingly, to include a hidden message to cult supporters in his apology to victims of sexual abuse in 2018. And perhaps just as troubling is the Prime Minister's refusal, over years, to give a clear account of his use of language that day and what influence Mr Stewart may have had in that.
The crimes of ritual sexual abuse happened in schools, churches, youth groups, scout troops, orphanages, foster homes.
It is the term ritual that has created the controversy and why the Prime Minister used it.
The use of the phrase ritual sex abuse would have been taken as validation of the conspiracy theory by QAnon followers because it's a person in authority using this phrase which appears to directly reference the conspiracy theory.
Four Corners last night documented a series of text messages from Tim Stewart referring to his attempts to get the PM to mention ritual abuse ahead of the speech. The program reported a text message received by an associate of Stewart with a copy of a message he had sent to his wife Lynelle, who is not only the best friend of the PM's wife Jenny, but who is also working for the couple at Kirribilli House.
An army of victims and therapists would specifically love it if Scott's apology referenced ritual abuse victims. This exact wording is a key phrase for victims. Think of this like a code that sends a direct and clear message that they have been heard by Scott specifically.
On the morning of the parliamentary apology, there were further text messages from Stewart.
Good morning, mate. I think Scott is going to do it. Pretty sure speech is at 11. I hope he says it. Scott is very aware of the enormity of today.
Your country believes you.
After the speech, Tim Stewart and his son Jesse, who is also a QAnon follower, tweeted,
"You know the Great Awakening is in full swing when the Australian Prime Minister at Scott Morrison MP mentions ritual abuse. Scott is a patriot."
The Prime Minister has refused to answer media questions about his relationship with Mr Stewart on multiple occasions. 3 sets of questions asked in the Senate about the relationship and the controversy have gone unanswered. A response his office has given to the question of the term ritual abuse only raises further questions.
The term ritual is one that the Prime Minister heard directly from the abuse survivors, and the National Apology to Victims and Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse reference group he met with in the lead-up to the apology, and refers not just to the ritualised way or patterns in which so many crimes were committed, but also to the frequency and repetition of them.
Four Corners reported last night that it had spoken to most of the members of the reference group and seen their formal written advice. The phrase ritual abuse is not mentioned. The Prime Minister's office today pointed out the phrase appears in the Royal Commission's papers in summaries of victim stories. Beyond the question of the Prime Minister's relationship with Tim Stewart and the origins of the language used in that historic speech is the broader one about the PM's sense of accountability. This includes answering questions about another close friend, Hillsong pastor Brian Houston, who was censured by the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse, and who Mr Morrison eventually admitted he had tried to get invited to a White House dinner during a state visit in 2019. But this was only after an earlier response to questions from reporters.
Can you tell us what happened there?
I don't comment on gossip, honestly.
So it's not true?
It's all gossip. Yeah.
Did you actually put a request in for him to
I don't comment on gossip of stories about other stories.
Does that mean it's not true, though?
It means it's gossip.
Why all the secrecy on stuff that on the surface would seem to be not that big a deal?
Lee, well, I've disclosed the issues you've referred to. So, I mean, in relation to one of those matters, I mean, I could have been more candid at the time about it. I wish I was, but frankly, it wasn't a big deal.
National security has been the Coalition's political bread and butter for years. Tim Stewart's family said in last night's program that they had been alarmed enough about Tim and Jessie Stewart's behaviour that they had reported them on a number of occasions to the National Security Hotline.
I don't know what might happen in Australia, but that's what raises our concern, that we do have family members who are involved in something that could finish up being a threat to Australia.
The Prime Minister's absence in Europe this week means he will not be in Parliament to answer questions directly, but the opposition was upping the ante today.
The Prime Minister has, for almost 2 years, refused to answer any questions about his friendship with prominent QAnon supporter Tim Stewart. Why?
The fact that those opposite may wish to ask questions about the husband of a friend of the Prime Minister's wife is a question for them.
If the Prime Minister of this country has allowed a discredited conspiracy group, which is dangerous and regarded as a terrorist threat by the FBI, to have input to government statements, then that is a matter of the most serious grievance.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.